Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, I just wanted to take a minute or two and just kind of clarify a few elements of our latest series of Romeo and Juliet study questions. So, I'm referring to um, 2.5, right? That is Act 2, Scene 5. And I don't feel the need to go over all of them. I believe number one is fairly obvious what you have to do there. Okay, number two and number three actually require a little bit more of reading, and I just want to make sure that we know what's going on. So number two, without reading the whole thing to you, I mean you have it in front of you, but number two is basically actually has two specific questions. The first is, what is the paradox or irony in Friar Lawrence's warning to Romeo, quoted above? That's what I'm going to focus on. I think the second one is a little bit easier. I think people can kind of at least understand what it's asking. But if you watched my series of videos, I started with a about 15-minute video on what paradox was. And, it's two opposing elements tied together into the same meaning. And so it deals with contradiction, it deals with opposites, it deals with kind of something that's not logical, having a truth to it. So I would recommend you watch the paradox video. And then I had a follow up about irony because the two are very closely connected. So if number two is messing with you a little bit, then I would say go back and watch those again, or perhaps for the first time if you missed them. Hope not, but hey, whatever. So understanding what's going on in those two video lessons, I think makes this a lot easier. All right, but let's take a look at what it's asking you to do. You're looking at that quote from Friar Lawrence to Romeo. These violent delights have violent ends, and in their triumph die, like fire and powder, which as they kiss consume. Friar Lawrence didn't just like bang his head, fall on the ground, and start uttering that. It didn't come out of nowhere, right? What is the context? He's warning Romeo about this really passionate, impulsive decision that he's just going to marry Juliet. He's known her, what, 24 hours? So he's giving him advice. Now, we could go into other discussions here, why he does it and what's the point, but just look at that quote and see if you can take that apart and find inside of it a paradox, right? Where in there is there something perhaps that's beautiful or wonderful? Can you point to anything that's beautiful? The word triumph appears, right? Kiss. What's going on? So if there's any kind of beauty in there, then ask yourself, okay, but is there an opposite idea, or is there a different image or concept that goes against beauty? Are there two types of things in that quote that are very different? I don't want to say good or bad, but are they just one is this and oh my God, the other is that? If you can find that, and I would also suggest going back up and reading those guiding questions that set the question up, right? The guiding questions were, you know, um, questions to consider. As Juliet and Romeo and Juliet are compared to powder and fire, what is the greater message? In contrast, why is there triumph? Alongside the triumph of their kiss, what happens when fire kisses gunpowder? And you start to say, uh-oh, right? So if you were struggling with that one, I just wanted to help clarify what I'm asking you to do. All right? I did not specifically post the same directions that I've been posting, but if you watched my last video where I talked about responses to these types of questions, you'll know that you're going to want to give me a paragraph and you're going to want to try to throw a quote in there to help out. All right? I'm going to just quickly go down now to number 3. And I'm going to be brief here, people. This is asking you to consider what moderation means, right? And moderation basically means to control, right? To show restraint, to not go too far. So, for example, if you're moderating your diet, you're not eating a lot of really unhealthy food because you're trying to moderate, you're trying to cut back. If you were trying to moderate your Netflix watching, you're not going to watch as much. You're going to be more in control and try to be more balanced, right? You're not going to sit there for 8 hours and watch Netflix. So when you moderate, you are kind of cutting something back. You're curtailing it. You're keeping it balanced. You're not going too far. And you start to think, well, You know what? Romeo and Juliet, that doesn't sound like a lot of moderation. That sounds like they're going nuts, right? They're falling in love, they're getting married, they're racing around. Okay, so that is what you wanted to try to figure out. So number 3, I'll read it for you real quick. Find one news article from this week and explain how this event or the people reported in the news article would benefit from moderation. In your 2-paragraph response, 4 to 5 sentences for each, include the name and the author of the article, a brief summary of the events in the article, explain what's going on, an explanation of the kind of moderation that would improve the situation. So what are you talking about? Like, is what must be done? What would improve the situation in that article? What would make things better? What kind of moderation? And then finally, an explanation of why moderation would improve the situation. So here's the name of the author, here's the article, here's what's going on. Let me break it down for you. And then this is what they need to fix this. For something to get better here, they need to kind of do this. And then the final one would be, and here's why it would help. Okay, so there was a little bit of confusion regarding that one. If you've noticed, these questions are a lot more reflective this time around. Only number 1 is asking you to actually, hey, break down what goes on in this act and scene. Tell me what's going on in 2.5. And I even said, you could do a paragraph, or you could even make a list of bullets or numbers. But if you do that, I just ask that you use complete sentences. So I didn't talk a lot about 1 because I feel like that's fairly straightforward. Okay, but number 2 has this big, long setup, and I wanted you to understand what it's asking. All right, and again, same for 3. And I define moderation right up here anyway. All right, so no big deal, people. I just wanted you to have a little bit more of an explanation regarding these, because these are very reflective questions, and I'm asking you to do some things that maybe we didn't really do in the previous act, Act 2, Scene 4, or Act 2, Scene 3. All right, people, thank you.